Hey everyone, Jim T. Graham with RCGroups.com, and today we're looking at some products from Bird's Eye View. They sent me an email and asked me if I was interested in doing a little review. And just an FYI, I review things that I think are cool or I find interesting, or usually if they're useful, I definitely want to check them out. I like little units like this because you can stick this camera on anything and all you have to do is plug it into a battery. And I have a couple of cameras like this and I really like them. Stick them on your quad, your plane, whatever. Move from plane to plane. I have Velcro on just about everything. So here's their unit. It's two antennas, and we're going to talk about those. And now we're going to start out with the camera. I don't have a ton of info on this thing. It's called the Razer Cam 200, 200 milliwatts. They also have a 25 milliwatt version. It's kind of aerodynamic, hence the name, I think. 32 channels, 29 grams. Operating voltage 6.5 to 30. I've got it plugged into a 3-cell off my main pack usually. And the lens is standard, not a fisheye. And in the picture you can see how big it is on my compared to my hand. So, you know, you could stick this thing on some medium-sized, smaller-sized quads, just about any winged platform that you want. And that's pretty cool. Now let's take a look at the antennas. Now, I thought it was interesting that they sent me a dome antenna, and that's for your transmitter, and we'll talk about that. That's not the interesting part. We'll come to that. It's an omnidirectional antenna. If you're new to FPV and you don't know, this antenna shoots a signal everywhere, so it's not directional. This is kind of standard procedure for a video transmitter for an upgrade antenna. And it's got the plastic housing, which keeps you from stepping on the antenna itself. I know, I've done it. Try to bend it back. And then this mounts directly onto the back of your camera. And so we'll take a look at that here with Mr. Terry in the background. So that's a pretty simple setup. Sometimes in a setup like this, you have your 90-degree turn there, and the antenna itself wants to slouch over. And I did have this issue here. Now, they didn't send me these connectors. These were my connectors. So if you need to do a 90-degree angle like this, you need to order some connectors that will work. And what I do is I have a handful of different connectors that I use on my different planes. And so I have some other photos of this. We'll pop into one more and then we'll jump out. We'll look at what it looks like on this unit. So that's kind of your footprint, not too big. Slap a piece of Velcro on the bottom of the mounting pad. Slap a piece of corresponding Velcro to whatever it is you want to mount it to, your dog, your child, whatever. Don't do that, by the way, because video transmitters do transmit signals and you don't want to be cooking anyone's brain. Okay, so let's jump over and look at the Pulsar antenna. So usually you would only run a directional antenna like this if you're also running a second antenna with a diversity receiver. But I always try to review things the way they send them to me, so I don't want to mix and match antennas. So I did something I wasn't sure how it was going to work out, and we'll get to that in the video. So let's talk about this. This is a wide beam 5.8 high gain circular polarized antenna. It's got 140 degrees of angle and 9 dB. So pretty cool. I like the stalk and the length and how you could move it around or bend it up or down. And a great little unit as far as being nice and small and, you know, for what it is. And so the question is how is it going to fly? So we took my Surfer 1500, my current favorite plane right now, and I mounted this on that, simply Velcroed to the little canopy right there. And then we see our circular antenna coming off the back. And I'm running that to a receiver, and I have the Pulsar on there. So just to talk a little bit more about the antenna that we're looking at right here, it's the dome antenna, omnidirectional, like I already said. Basically what it's doing is it gives you a good signal whether you're inverted or in a turn. Once again, the dome is a great piece that I like having on my antenna just to protect it. And they're claiming that this is better than a cloverleaf antenna. And it's compatible with Fat Shark, Immersion RC transmitters, and suitable for 5.8, the whole spectrum. there's only one thing left to do, and that is throw this thing in the air and see what we get. So basically what I'm going to do is, I don't fly long range since I try to keep within the rules of the AMA. But what I am going to do is see how, and here we are at our lovely field. We're at my field here in Nashville, Tennessee, and so I have a single receiver, not a diversity, and I put the Pulsar antenna on it. And so I have had directional antennas where if you got beyond the edge of the antenna, everything gets staticky. So it's almost impossible just to run this antenna. But since that's how they sent it to me, that is how I wanted to test it. So we're going to throw the surfer in the air. We'll get a look at how the camera's working. Now there's no way to tweak this camera. I will say that I tried to change the focus on it with our new, we have an article out on how to focus your lens. And I will say it was already exactly where I would have put it if it wasn't in focus. So out of the box, it's focused. As you can see, it's a pretty good image. Also, you can see, I feel like right there, I'm like, okay, that's probably the edge of this receiving antenna of the Pulsar. So I turn around and come back. One thing I did the other day is I have lots of cameras, high end, low end, you name it. And so I started, put on my goggles and I was swapping out cameras to see if I could tell the difference between a 700 and a 800 and a 600. And while some cameras are radically different, for the most part, and that's the edge right there of that antenna. Now, I will say to throw that, I had to throw it in the goggles. I might have been a little bit in the way of the signal, but we're going to go on the other side and see how far back behind this antenna I can get. This is the part that surprised me. So one thing that I was concerned with was, what if I get in the air and this thing is so limited that I won't be able to, I might fly out of range, because you want that other Omni there to pick up, and a diversity receiver to pick up your signal. And what I found is that this thing has a pretty broad sweep. And once again, you probably don't want to run this by yourself like I'm doing in this test, but it was good enough for me to work that way. Bam! That's pretty good landing, right? So, the dome antenna, these are pretty stock, but this is an upgrade for anyone flying F5.8, so you definitely want that. And the Pulsar antenna, I say that's what you need if you're running a diversity, and because if you're running diversity, you definitely want to run two antennas to take advantage of those two receivers. And this would be the other one to get. Now, the other way to go is a dome to a dome, so a clover leaf to a clover leaf. And then the camera, you can see it right there. That's pretty crisp and clean, It's not the very best, but the very best isn't much different than this. Now, the low light is a little tweaky, where this is a pretty sunny day, so when we got in the shadows, it did get a little dark, but, not overly so. So anyway, this should give you an overview of the antennas, and more so, what I'm really looking at here is the quality of this camera, mounting to an airplane with a simple plug-in via JST, and we throw it back in the air again. So here's where I say it's getting a little dark. So what happens is it gets a little dark and it has to adjust itself. And there's no way to go in there. There's no menu or anything that I can tell. You can change your channels on the camera, but that is it. So I think this is the part where I go back and I'm like, well, how far back behind myself can I go with this thing? I must have chickened out. I think I go back one more time a little farther and really test it. And once again, I am not an 8-mile flyer. I'm not a 6-mile. I'm not flying 6 miles away. This is pure FPV, meaning there's no board on this plane. There's no return to home. There's no GPS. There's none of that stuff. We're flying FPV pure. And the beauty of this little system is you could stick this on anything from your Carbon Z Cub to your F-15, whatever, your jet. Okay, this is when I go back, because there's a lawnmower. I'm way back behind myself. And I just got a little bit of static and decided to turn it back around. But, I'm way up ahead and to the left of this shot. So I guess what I'm saying here is this antenna actually gets around back pretty good. And I'm really impressed with the camera. I could live with this all day long. And, you know, the great part is um, you get all this, you're a beginner, it's all there. You know, if you want to move on and get up with other things, you can, but this is a great start. Bam! That is right at my feet. Please give it up. That was an awesome landing. Thank you. Head place. So anyway, we have been looking at the FPV beginner setup for bird's eye view. Go check them out, birds-i-view.nl, and they have this. You can go in and buy all the options. You can pick your antenna, you can pick your camera, you can pick a different antenna other than the ones that we're looking at. They also have some monitors. Hello, bird's eye view. I want to talk to you about that because I definitely need to move on up in that area. But thanks to them for sending this out. I hope this has proved helpful, especially for a beginner. You know, if you are an old pro, this could come in handy as something to have in the bag when you're out messing around or FPV racing. But if you're new, this is definitely a great way to mount it onto something you already have and get flying ASAP. You're going to need a receiver and something to look through, a monitor or goggles, but you can find that stuff on the site. Hey, I'm Jim T. Graham with RC Groups. Thanks for watching.